So now that we've talked about that, we're going to ask if people have questions. Sorry about that. Can you say your name when you do your question? Thank you.
Of course. My name's Ante. I'm a student here at Central Washington University. I'm just curious if, I know all of our ballots are done by mail, but I know that Central in the past has done a thing where down in 137 we print out ballots and make that available for people that don't get their ballots sent to them here. This might be a question more for you, actually. Is that going to be done again? And if so, another question for Jerry, is there other polling places in the city of Ellensburg?
So yes, we're going to be joining forces with the students at Central Washington University for the March presidential preference primary. The league, I believe, is partnered with the students as well. So that will be done. We're currently in the planning process of doing that. And we don't have polling places anymore in the state of Washington. We have vote centers. So Central Washington University is not a vote center. It is an election assistance center that the students put on and we support. We have a vote center from the day we mail ballots until election night at 8 o'clock at the courthouse. And then during election day, not all elections, but particularly with the general election, and we haven't decided on the March election yet, we will have a vote center in Upper County at the senior center. So there are always, it's required to have a vote center at the courthouse. It's not required to have one in the Upper County, but we do at times. And then we do join forces with the students for the general election every year. And this year we're going to do it for the presidential preference primary as well.
Thank you. More questions?
Hi, I'm Kelly, and I was wondering if I can get a copy of the slides or if you would be willing to email them to Steve in Grant County. So
So all the slides from tonight will be on the Kittitas County League of Women Voters website.
Okay.
And there will be a copy of the videotape tonight too. And also I'm going to ask both county chairs to send me a schedule of these dates so that we can have that as well. And in addition, Charlie Sorensen, who is our voter services chair, is going to have a voter's guide on the Kittitas County League website in the next day or so. And it will also have links to all this information.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? There's a hand over there. No, that's talking hand, not. There's a hand here.
I'm wondering what sort of systems there might be in place for students who are currently abroad, studying abroad in other countries. Is there an abroad type of ballot that they can participate in the election with?
We have a process in the United States, which also includes the state of Washington. It's called UOCAVA. That's Uniformed and Overseas Voters. So people who are registered and request that, who live abroad and or there are military who potentially are abroad as well, as long as they've indicated to us that that is the case and provided us with the address, absolutely. And those ballots go out 45 days before Election Day. So we talk about the election, about ballots going out the week after, what is it, March 8th or February 18th. Those ballots that are going overseas have already gone out. So those people have a long time to be able to get their ballots and be able to get them returned. Also, if people who are overseas or who do, for some reason don't receive that ballot, they have the ability to go online and retrieve that ballot through the state of Washington system, VoteWA, to be able to get their ballot as well. They can go online, they identify their name, birth date, and then they're able to pull up their particular ballot. So then they can print it out, fill it out, and mail it to us. So they have up until 8 o'clock election night to do that, as long as they can get it in the mail and get it postmarked. But however, with the military in particular, as long as those people have signed that ballot on election day, those ballots will be counted. And by the way, as long as those ballots have been put in the mail, they have until the day before certification day for us to receive it to be counted.
That was a really good question. Thank you. We'll be sure to make sure we link to those on our website. More questions?
The question I came to hear the answer to tonight is, what's the relationship between the caucuses and the primary? And the impression I got from what you said is the caucuses are for selecting delegates and the primary is for selecting candidates. Is that correct?
It seemed like you were looking at me, Meg. No?
They're done differently, so go ahead, Steve.
So the word caucus simply means a meeting of supporters. And it is a little confusing because, as I understand it, the Republican Party uses precinct caucuses to elect delegates to the
So
county
just use the
convention.
Democratic. Marlene's going to talk about the Republican.
Yeah, you are.
I know, but that's okay.
No, I mean the other way. Yeah.
Whereas the Democratic Party uses something called a caucus only for the 13th LD subcaucus, which runs in parallel with our county convention, to elect delegates to the state convention. And those same delegates also participate in a congressional district level caucus. That's where the first of the national delegates are elected. And anyone who shows up at our county convention and is willing to hold their nose and claim to be a Democrat for a day can be a voting member of the process.
So in a certain way, they are kind of similar. We do the precinct caucuses first, electing delegates to the county convention, and the county convention electing delegates to the state convention. And that's where our delegates are elected, because the primary is going to take place prior to that. So yeah, you're correct. We're doing it at the state convention level.
So that means that all of the allocations, the votes for the candidates count in the election. The delegates are allocated and elected at the caucuses. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, good. Did you,
Does
go
that
ahead.
answer you, Meg, does that answer your question?
I don't think it did.
So the primary election identifies the number of votes for the individual candidates. So then once they get to the convention or to, the delegate election, what they're doing is electing the number of delegates that will be allocated to those individual candidates according to the primary election vote.
Okay. Good. Other questions?
What sort of, beyond just choosing a delegate, as you get to the higher levels, are there screenings that delegates go through to make sure they're not, if that makes sense?
I think we understand what you're trying to ask. I think the short answer is no, except that we're assuming that the person will have a conscience. We're assuming that we'll be able to tell by listening to them talk about why they should be elected as a delegate, whether they would make a worthy delegate. And no doubt, just as with elections generally, mistakes are occasionally made, but the system is robust enough that it can deal with that.
And I would say with the Republican Party, there's probably a lot of vetting going around. People know those people by the time they get to that, and they know what, but again, just like Steve said, mistakes happen or people play you. But for the most part, I think they're vetted.
Jerry, did you have something?
Nope.
You want? Okay. Okay, good. I'm glad Michael can see people because I can't.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Rietveld. I was wondering if my legal name change would generally affect if my vote is counted. I've got the court order, the DMV change, but I haven't gotten the Social Security correction. Is that going to affect my ability to vote?
Changing the Social Security isn't going to affect it. What's going to affect it is whether or not you've updated your voter registration for the legal name change. So one of the things that happens is for people who get married and then their last name changes, one of the things we do work really hard at is when we verify signature, is some people will not get their voter registration updated for that last name change. As long as we can verify the first name, then we do work really hard in order to allow that ballot to go through. However, if you've changed your name and haven't updated that signature, what will occur is your name will come through, you've signed it, and it'll be a mismatch. So if you haven't updated your signature, haven't updated your voter registration, we will send you a letter for that update. So you have an opportunity to do that. Also, you have an opportunity to update that information online or through the mail up to 8 days before Election Day. And then you can come into the office or to the Election Assistance Center here at Central up until 8 o'clock on election night and update that information, as well as register to vote for those who have not registered to vote up until 8 o'clock on election night. So those opportunities have been changed significantly, and this year is the first time that that's changed for both updating and original registrations up through election day.
So, Jerry, it should be as simple as Jonathan going to vote.wa.gov, and he can make the change right there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What about if his signature has changed?
The signature, well, if your signature's changed, you need to update your signature. And that's
Right.
part of the issue with the mismatches. If we have people who have as many as, I think, 7 or 8 different versions of their signature in our voter registration database. Because what happens is if you sign your ballot envelope and it doesn't match, then we're going to send you a letter for that update. So that's what's really important, is to sign your ballot envelopes the same way that your voter registration signature is. And if you don't know that, then it's important for you to update that signature. Because then we do everything we can in order to try to count that ballot, including sending you a letter out for that update.
When you register to vote, your signature comes off your driver's license, right? That's why the voter
If you-
registration form asks you for a driver's license number.
That's the driver's license number is for verification of your identification. Mm-hmm. Your signature on your driver's license comes to us in 2 ways. If you've updated that information at a DMV office, or if you register online. Right. If you fill out a voter registration form, the signature on that form is what is uploaded into our system for that verification purpose.
And if you want to update your signature tonight, the League of Women Voters have a table outside with cards where you can update your signature, and we will take it to the auditor's office or hand it to Jerry to make sure it gets there.
Sounds like you're covered, Jonathan.
Okay, so that's great. And it's a really good question. And that's another really good thing that we emphasize when we go out as a league talking to schools, is that think about how you sign things, because you will get a letter back. It's the other reason why it's a good idea to put your phone number or your email address on your envelope so that they can get a hold of you. Our state is an intent to vote state, and other states aren't. Other states, if they can't figure this out, your ballot just isn't counted. In our state, the auditor's office does everything possible to make sure that your vote counts, including writing these letters and calling people. Other questions?
So, I'm a pretty vagabond spirit because I'm a college student and I have been in the military, so I have lived in multiple places. I have a county, a home county where I grew up, but I also live here. I have lived in other counties. Is there, and I don't know what sort of ability you're able to speak to this, but is there an opinion you can proffer on how somebody chooses where they register, where their home is?
The state of Washington is very open when it comes to identifying where you believe you live. It talks about with your abode. So if many students continue their registration in their home county, in their home state. However, if your choice is that you live here in Ellensburg, you can choose to register here in this county. So it has to do with where you believe you live, and that's the key. So there's no one who's going to do the county auditor's office isn't the voter registration police, unless we have indication that there is someone who has violated a voter registration law. However, there are statutes on the books where someone who believe that you don't live where you have registered to vote. It's called a voter registration challenge, and there are specific statutes and specific things that someone has to do in order to do that. And any registered voter can come in with a voter registration challenge. But again, the state is very open regarding your choice as to where you believe you live.
So, Jerry, one could believe that they live in the place where their vote would make the most difference.
Of course, as long as they have, as long as they're, you go back to the voter registration challenge statute. People are going to look, where's your driver's license address? Where do you receive your mail? Those kind of things are issues that you would need to deal with, because if someone were to mount a voter registration challenge and they start looking property ownership, where do you, what kind of things are you dealing with there? So you can't just go out and choose, well, I live somewhere that you really don't. Some people have attempted to register to vote at their business. That's not their residence. The voter registration has to do with your specific residence. So, people don't live at their business. Well, some people do. There's a few. They really do. They have an apartment upstairs, or they have an apartment in the back. Those things occur. But they're very limited and very few. Does that help?
And there are options for people who actually are homeless.
There is a term that's called I'm trying to remember the term right now, but yes, if someone is homeless and they live on the corner of 16th and Capitol or something like, that's not a good description in the city of Ellensburg, but yes, they can identify a unique place in order to register to vote.
And this comes up a lot when we talk to high school students, because a significant portion of our high school students in the state of Washington are homeless. And so many schools will offer to be their address. Some churches do this as well. And the reason I'm saying this is you may be interacting with people who don't have a permanent address. They may be couch surfing. So it's important, and then if they move, it's important that they change that. And that's the most important thing, is that if you move, your ballot comes to where you said you want that ballot mailed to. So if you move, you can go online and change it. You can add a mailing address. And it's really important to do that. If you happen to have moved between when the ballots are sent and when you have to vote them, then you go to either the center here at the school, or you go to the auditor's office and you can get your ballot there, right?
So we forward ballots.
You forward ballots, okay.
But you have to put in a forwarding address.
Right.
And you may live at an address where an apartment building is, but you move from one apartment number to another. That is a change of address. It is very critical that you update that. Now, if you put in a forwarding address, we're going to forward your ballot. All counties in the state of Washington now forward ballots.
It looks like we have one more question here in the red hat, whose name I can't remember.
Would a P.O. box count as a forwarding address?
Absolutely. It's a mailing address.
Okay.
And many people, some people will, because maybe they're moving often, they'll set up a P.O. box, which is easier then for us to mail it to. But remember, if you're going to move, we still want to know what your physical address is in order for you to get the proper ballot. Because you move from inside the city to outside the city, you move from one side of the city to the other. I mean, it affects what school district you live in, it affects what fire district you live in, it may affect what commissioner district you live in. Any of those things occur, you know, it could affect what particular ballot face you get and the things you get to vote on.
So you have to have a physical address, and then you can have a P.O. box as a mailing address.
Yep, you can have any mailing address you want as long as we have your physical address.
Okay.
And there are many people who go south for the winter.
Right.
They will come in and provide us with a different mailing address so that they get their ballot.
Okay. We have a question back here.
What is to prevent my friend in the red hat from registering both in Washington and in his home state?
Well, there are two different systems that are national. The one that the state of Washington is involved in and was actually in the pilot project, it's a system called ERIC. So periodically throughout the year, all of our voter registration database is compared to voter registration databases throughout within other states of the United States. And I know of many, not a lot, but there are some people who have registered in another state and not canceled their registration here. So the question becomes, did they vote in both places? Well, we have the ability to check that. And then if you do that, then it becomes a violation of not only state law, but federal election law. So it's important that if you move to another state, that again, you cancel your registration in the state you moved from. So we do verify those, and many, many states are involved in that process. So we do verify that, and then we also can compare that other state, whether or not they've actually voted in both places or not.
Good.
I was just wanting to know when your next election would be.
We're currently in an election for Clallam-Roslyn School District, Kittitas School District, Damon School District, and the City of Roslyn. And there are items on the ballot for each of those jurisdictions. The next election will be March 10th, which will be the presidential preference primary, and those ballots are going to be going out on February 18th. And that is a county-wide election and of course, statewide election, so anyone who is registered to vote in the state of Washington is going to be getting a ballot for that election.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So I understand if I write in Mr. Potato Head or something for a write-in, who isn't a write-in, it won't be counted. How do I know? This is one of the things that's driven me crazy as a political science professor. You can't vote for write-ins unless they're an official write-in candidate. How do we know who the official write-in candidates are?
We will have that information on our website. It'll be on the Secretary of State's website, so it will be through VoteWa, which is now our statewide voter registration system, as well as I'm hoping that if there are write-in candidates, both the Democrat and or Republican Party will have that information on their websites, either locally and or statewide.
And we will also update that on the League of Women Voters website as well.
Hi, Kelly again, sorry. I didn't realize this. I thought when I moved and I registered in the new state, my prior registration in the old state, that invalidated it once I registered in my new state. So for those of us who have moved across the country and come back to Washington, do I need to cancel registration in all those states?
In every state in which you've registered, yes, you should cancel your registration there. And every state has different rules. So the answer to your question is yes.
Thank you. I do not want to be caught in Eric.
No, you don't.
I do not.
That's good. Good question.
Actually, if you are caught in Eric, and what happens is we merely start, each state will send you a letter to verify that information of where you actually are living, and then based upon that information that you send back, then they cancel that registration.
Okay, we're giving Michael a workout tonight. Good job.
Hi, thank you. I just had a question. I know that sometimes when you're a new student moving from out of state, and perhaps you've put in applications to live on campus or something, and by the time you get here, they haven't been approved or gone through. And just like you were mentioning earlier about the homeless and not being able to have an address to put down to register to vote, I understand that when you go to get a license, you have to have an address and all that. But as far as being a registered voter, if it still happens to be without a home, is there no way, I don't know about your policy, is there no way that they could have a specific address here on campus to place down, especially if they know the reason is to be a vote, for a vote, at least to have voters registration so that they can at least have their, because you don't have an address doesn't mean you don't have a voice as a part of the vote, I mean. So I know that there's shelters that they have. I'm not sure if they're of the rule about putting down addresses for registering to vote, but I mean, what do you think? You guys have like a general address? I know what you were saying earlier about the apartment buildings and everything, which is a good thing to say, very good spirit. But I mean, do you have like a general address like here for campus students who you know are enrolled, but you see they're in between homes or housing?
So the answer to that question is no. Every organization that you spoke of has potentially different rules. It used to be years ago that those people who didn't have a specific physical address would register to vote with the county courthouse address. That's changed. And some people have tried that. Homeless people have asked. So there are different ways of doing it. And if people have that concern, then we're happy to work with them at the county. Come into the auditor's office and we'll try to help you figure out how to manage that. And hopefully we'll be able to figure out an answer for you to be able to participate in the process.
If they come into the auditor's office, can't you just give them a ballot and they could vote it and give it back to you?
If they have a physical address where
They
we
have
can
to have a
identify a precinct and an address to be somewhere, and again, it doesn't have to be a regular address. I mean, we've had people who have lived under a bridge at the West Interchange come in and want to vote, and all we have to do is identify where that is, and then we can identify it in the system, and we can hand you a ballot because of the different. We have to be able to identify a physical place to be able to get you the appropriate ballot for that particular area.
Thank you.
So those are good questions. And if you have more questions like that, Jerry's going to be available outside afterwards to answer those. Any more questions about the process? Because I want to make sure people get their tacos, too. So okay, we have a question over here.
Someone over here.
Where's the question?
I don't know. Somebody pointed, but I can't see where the question is. I think I was wrong. Okay, so I have a question for each of the people on the stage, and then we're going to ask you to do the same question out front as you take your food out and enjoy it. The question is, coming up, why we vote. And so I'd like each of you to say why you choose to vote and what's the most important thing we should remember about this particular election for the primary going forward. Jerry?
The reason I choose to vote is because I have the ability to participate in the process. One of the things that we talk about all the time is every vote counts. Now, some people may think that that's maybe not generally the case with the presidential preference primary or even with the general election with the president. But we have got multiple examples of races that are identified and are chosen. People win with 1, 2, less than a half a dozen votes. So every person should participate in this process, because then you have an opportunity to have a voice. And having a voice in the political process, or having a voice in the election process, is so important in this country, because we have the freedom to be able to do that. We have the opportunity to participate, and we do everything we can to avoid voter, my words just went away, voter suppression, because everyone should have that opportunity. So please do that. What was the other question?
The other question was, what's the most important thing people need to think about for this election?
Vote for the person that you really believe you want to represent you, because that's where you at. Do the research, know who the candidates are, and vote for the person who most fits your personal preference and your personal values.
Good. Marlene?
So my belief is if you don't vote, you should not complain about anything that happens in government. You have no right to do that if you don't participate, whether you believe your vote counts or not. It certainly doesn't count if you don't vote. For Washington State, the Republicans are definitely in the minority, so a lot of Republicans say my vote doesn't count. Why do I do this with the presidential election or not? But again, I'm going to repeat, if you don't vote, you have no say. I also believe that there is a lot of rural towns, a lot of places, if you would come out and vote, we would matter. The Republicans would matter. That's my personal opinion. You just asked again to the second question.
The second part is, what do you want people to remember about the nominating process? This election.
Yeah, I'd have to say the same thing. Do your research. Don't just listen to the media. Don't fall for a lot of this stuff. Do your research. Look at the real facts and vote your heart.
Good. Steve?
Democracy works better and better the more people vote. And one story I've been telling people lately, and I was just trying to find the person's name, it was one of the fathers of the science of statistics, did an interesting experiment. I think it was Francis Galton about 100 years ago. He was at a county fair in England, and he noticed that there was a contest where people were buying chances to win a steer, a cow, and they guessed the hanging weight of the animal, okay, not the weight on the hoof, but the weight on the hook. Hard to guess. He was able to collect all of the guesses, there were 800 or 900 of them, and when he averaged all of the guesses, they were right to the pound of the actual hanging weight of the animal, something that's basically unknowable. All of these people voting together found the exact right weight of the animal. And that's how I think about voting in a democracy. I'm with the League of Women Voters. Of course, I would like to see Democrats vote, but it's really important that everybody vote because it's a system that is designed to work better and better the more people vote, the more numbers of people who vote. With regard to the primary, don't try to game the system. Vote for your favorite candidate. Don't try to decide what am I going to do if so-and-so drops out. Maybe you want to wait until after Super Tuesday if there's some question, but don't try to game the system. Vote for your favorite candidate. That's how the system works best.
Katherine,
Thank
may
you.
I? So, Secretary of State Kim Wyman has a story, and I don't know the details of the story, but the bottom line is, if you don't vote, you are allowing everyone who does to choose the way things work within government. So just be aware of that. If you don't vote, you're letting others make those decisions for you.
And this question I get to answer too. So the reason I vote is because when the country was envisioned, most people weren't voters. And people fought and marched, and some people died, and some people were tortured so that I could vote as a woman. and so that people who are Native Americans and African Americans and Asian Americans can vote. And so I vote for all of those people, and also because I think my father would come back and haunt me. Beyond that, in 2016, if you take all of the eligible voters in the country, then the percentage of eligible voters who voted for either Secretary Clinton or President Trump in the primaries and the caucuses was about 14% of eligible voters. When we sit at those league tables and ask, are you going to vote in the next election? People say to us, well, my vote doesn't count. Well, we've just found out that it's not true. But they also say that I don't like the choices. Well, in this state, every eligible citizen has the option to have a voice in the Democratic and Republican Party's nominating process. And to me, I'd rather all of us made that choice rather than just 14% of us. Thank you very much for coming tonight. We want to thank all the people that made this happen. There's a lot of us who came. I thank each of the panelists, Jerry from the Auditor's Office, Marlene from the Republican Party, and Steve Verhey. Thank you very much for coming. The League of Women Voters is very proud to be asked to be a partner with the Associated Students of Central Washington. We want to create more partnerships with other nonpartisan organizations. Thank you very much for inviting us and providing the tacos. It's great. And this has been live streamed, and also the video is going to be available so you can share it with your friends and relatives. The most influential person about getting somebody else to vote is you. The people who love and trust and respect you are going to follow your lead. So work at getting somebody else to vote with you. The League is out there to register people to vote. We have cupcakes because our 100th birthday is next week, and we have tacos. Thank you for joining us.
And this is the 100th anniversary.